Welcome, everyone, to the Vashon Island Unitarian Fellowship. The title of our service today is We Would Be One. And our speaker is Reverend Carrie Kopnick. And I'm Mary Van Gemmer. Michael Whitmore is our wonderful musician. And our tech person is Runeberg. Thank heavens. There's a heaven. And our coordinator is Captain Sullivan. So, the theme for the month of March here is vulnerability. And Michael, are you going to start with your prelude? Oh, feeling peaceful. Welcome. Good morning and welcome to the Vashon Island Unitarian Fellowship. My name is Mary Van Gemmer and I will be your service leader for today. I have to say my nose sounds stuffed up because I have developed this lovely thing called late onset asthma. Anyway, so as a reminder, this service is being recorded and will be posted on our website. While some of us here are at Lusal in person, other members of our beloved community are with us online. We are live streaming for those on Zoom. While you are not able to participate fully, we hold you in our hearts as part of our beloved community. Recording will be stopped for joys and concerns. We are a lay-led community strengthened and enriched by weaving together the volunteer contributions of our members and friends. Our community is supported and guided by our minister, Victoria Poland. If you are new, and we are especially glad you are here, please participate as you feel comfortable in our Sunday service. Human connection and relationships are important parts of our community. We invite you to stay for conversation following the end of the service. For those of you who are new, please introduce yourself at this time if you feel comfortable doing so. We are clear in our desire to acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Squamish Coast Salish Native people. The Puyallup and Muckleshoot people have lived on and stewarded these lands for the last 10 to 12,000 years since humans made their homes here from Asia, and they continue to do so today. We commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories as well as promoting social justice actions for and with the indigenous people of this land and beyond. As we settle in, we acknowledge that our congregation is committed to individual freedom of belief, welcomes diversity, seeks to promote a sense of community, and fosters religion which enriches the spirit. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you're welcome here and you belong here. Now, if you would, please repeat after me. It is good.
It is good.
It is good to be.
It is good to be.
It is good to be here together.
It is good to be here together.
Julie, please light our chalice and share our chalice lighting reading.
With the kindling of our flame, we recognize the fragility of life and our own vulnerability as we navigate challenges that always seem to come. May this light remind us of the strength we possess as individuals and collectively as a community to lean into and respond, finding our way forward together. And those words were by Reverend Talos Whitfield.
Thank you, Julie. And we now have our opening reading from Reverend Carrie Kopnick.
Our opening words this morning are from Mary Oliver from her book Upstream. I would say that there exist 1,000 unbreakable links between each of us and everything else, and that our dignity and our chances are one. The farthest star and the mud at our feet are family, and there is no decency or sense in honoring one thing or a few things and then closing the list. The pine tree, the leopard, the Platte River, and ourselves. We are at risk, or we are on our way to a sustainable world together. We are each other's destiny. And now let's join our voices for our first hymn, I guess our only hymn. It's number 318, We Would Be One. And if you'd like to rise in body or spirit, I invite you to do that. Thank you so much.
Reverend Carey is a lifelong UU and an interfaith minister and chaplain serving the Chaplaincy Institute, an interfaith seminary and community as the community minister. She has served as a congregational chaplain to area UU congregations when they are between ministers and is a spiritual director in private practice. Carrie lives in Kent, Washington, with her husband of 35 years and a very needy little dog. So, would you like to give your sermon now? It's your turn.
You think I know how to use a mask by now? Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you today, and I want to show you my Vashon Island. My son was married on Vashon last summer, so I had this made. So it really is a Vashon Island quilt. Although I wish Kit had put a little whale right here. Yeah, isn't it? I grew up attending a small, very secular fellowship in a suburb of Minneapolis. When I was 10, I asked my mom if we should get saved like those people on TV. She marched us right down to a funky little UU fellowship that was not too far from our home. We arrived in 1977 when no congregations lit a chalice in worship, and the 6 principles that had been a part of the UUA bylaws created in 1961 were never mentioned in the course of our fellowship's life. We grew up learning to be Unitarian Universalists by having fundraising lunches for the UU Service Committee, cooking and serving and cleaning with members, and painting the fellowship hall together. The conversations and the connections across age groups showed us how the adults in our fellowship were living out their values, how they were living out their authentic beliefs. Our Sunday school classes met weekly in the basement with one of those cardboard folding accordion room dividers pulled across the checkerboard linoleum. For a couple of years, our classes were centered around the film strips, remember film strips? From the UUA's Beacon Press curriculum on world religions. Beacon Press hoped to sell these curricula to schools and other secular groups. So we spent a year on Islam and a year on Hinduism. But our classes included nothing about Unitarian or Universalist or Unitarian Universalist history. It was okay though, because I learned by doing, by being, by belonging. That hymn that we just sang, We Would Be One, is one of my favorites. It was written by Unitarian minister Samuel Anthony Wright for Unitarian Universalist youth at their Continental Convention of 1953. At this conference, the 2 groups merged to form what they called Liberal Religious Youth, LRY. Any other LRYers out there? There's a story there. We'll tell you later. When We Would Be One was written, the lyrics were a little different. A few words were changed to be inclusive when Singing the Living Tradition, that great hymnal, was published in 1996. The original lyrics included to show mankind a new community, which is now to show to us, to show to all a new community, and strive to make men free, which is now strive to make us free. But the other change was our hymn of youth to our hymn of love. So you see how it was written for the youth. I chose this hymn and I share this little story because I think it's super cool that the Unitarian and the Universalist youth merged their organizations 8 years before the Unitarian and Universalist denominations did. The religious educators began considering merging in 1949 and formally consolidated in 1954, renaming as the Liberal Religious Education Directors Association, or LREDA. LREDA is still their acronym today, although now it stands for Liberal Religious Educators Association. We kind of mashed that D in there now. I served on the LREDA board and later worked for 4 years as their lone staff member. It's a history that religious educators claim proudly, breaking ground of becoming one faith. Another piece of how the history of the denominations came together is in the context of the time. Unitarians and Universalists had both lost members and energy and funding following World War I and the Great Depression. Work began to explore if there was a path to come together in 1938. Their headquarters were literally across the street from one another. But it wouldn't be until 1953, 15 years later, that the two denominations formed the Council of Liberal Churches. So the Council of Liberal Churches, Liberal Religious Youth, Liberal Religious Education Directors Association. You see the theme here, Council of Liberal Churches. Now let's spend just a minute looking further back into the deep history of both Unitarian and Universalist religions for a little sense of who and what these folks were. Now, it's true that we can find a history of both the ideas of Unitarianism and Universalism in European and English history. And I will always claim Francis David's proclamation that we attribute to him that says, you need not believe alike to love alike. In fact, it's really the foundation of my life. But the Unitarian and Universalism that Unitarian Universalism descends from were formed here, really, on this side of the Atlantic. Like many philosophies and ideas, similar things do and can emerge at different times or different places. A group of people in our young United States rejected the Calvinist ideas of predestination, of going to heaven or hell because it was chosen for you and unchangeable. This group believed that the idea of salvation by character, the idea of getting into heaven by doing good, was the way. This group was called Unitarians as a critique. It was a criticism. This is what their critics called them. The American Unitarians believed in the saved and the damned, but for them, the path to salvation was available to those who followed the laws of nature, which were, it seemed, overseen by a God of reason, say, much like the president. Given that American Unitarians were founded in about 815, and George Washington was elected in 1789, that makes a lot of sense. 26 years from when Washington was elected to the inception of Unitarianism. So our Unitarian ancestors here in the States were not so much rejecting the Trinity, like the Europeans and the English, but they were rejecting the idea of people being unchangeably damned to hell by a ruthless God. By 1985, they called themselves the National Conference of Unitarian and Other Christian Churches. Our Universalist ancestors were also reacting to Calvinism and that predestined road to heaven or hell. They were also called Universalists by their critics. It was a criticism, but the critics were right. And by 1780, Universalists had accepted the name and claimed the identity. The new Universalists accepted the Calvinist idea of God as monarch. It makes sense that they formed themselves as a monarchy. In 1780, there was no president. The Revolutionary War was still going on. So in the emerging Universalist belief, God was a sort of benevolent monarch. We were all princes and princesses, and God was working to save us. Predestination but all are going to heaven. If you were to put this in an elevator speech, we might say Unitarians believed that people were too good to be damned, and Universalists believed that God was too good to damn people. For all the unique elements of the roots of the faith, they were very alike, and as the years passed, the similarities grew even stronger. They continued to evolve and change and become pledging anew again and again as they learned more about living into the salvation of all and what that means. Now, for some of us, even those who might have been present at the consolidation of Unitarian and Universalism, these past faiths seem almost alien to us now. The Council of Christian Churches, saved by God. But that's the evolution. That's how we roll. We can claim quite a fierce heritage in our ancestors. Our lineage is one of heartfelt spiritual expansion and intellectual rigor. Heartfelt spiritual expansion and intellectual rigor. We can see from our very history that these are both dynamic, evolving faiths, and the long journey from Unitarianism and Universalism to UU, and then the continuing, evolving, and transforming through the next 60 years is absolute proof that we are, by our very existence, a living tradition. Given that there were so many similarities from the start, and these similarities grew as they both evolved toward justice for all, what do we think took these fierce, stalwart faiths so long to come together? I mean, we can joke that it's because a committee was formed. But the truth is, I love committee work. After working in the church kitchen, it's my favorite way to spend time in a church. Some of the best work happens in committees. But why so long? There's a story that goes that in 1959, 1,000 delegates met to vote on the plan to consolidate that was offered by a group called the Joint Merger Commission. These folks went into deep process with the Unitarians and the Universalists, both conflicted about the language that would be used to describe the new faith. Each group was offering amendments trying to use the language that would be true to their lived theology and respect the theology of the other group. At 1 a.m., there was a knock on the door of Unitarian minister Don Harrington. A colleague arrived with another version of proposed language. But Harrington thought there was not hope. The vote had not passed that evening, and it seemed that nothing could be done. At 3 a.m., there was another knock on the door by Unitarian leader Percival Brundage, with news that the Universalists had agreed to reconsider and vote with yet another version of the wording. The next day, after more debate and process, an agreement was reached. It still took another 2 years of process, a vote called by the congregations to discuss, and another vote, but finally, a merger agreement was reached. I think that there are probably hundreds of different opinions about why the consolidation actually took so long, but what I see from my decades, sometimes on the inside and sometimes on the outside of this faith, is that our people have their hearts and minds and souls held in a fierce commitment to rigorous process. This process is ours. It includes broad conversation had by congregations across the country in which they meet and debate and learn and listen and spoke and consider. This way is a part of our heritage and our faith's very DNA. And it's simply just who we are. A similar process happened when the 61 principles in the bylaws came up for renewal. Much of the credit for the regeneration of the 61 principles to the current 1985 version goes to UU Women. From the time of the merger in 1961 through the growing women's movement of the 70s, UU Women had become increasingly unhappy with the blatantly sexist language of the original principles. The blatantly sexist language of the original principles, including a reference to the dignity of man. At the same time, there were two other issues that made it clear that the 61 principles no longer reflected the theology and evolving understanding of justice and identity held by most UUs. The first was that traditions other than Jewish and Christian are important to our heritage. And second, that nature and the health of the environment is one of our primary theological concerns. But the organized action for change came from the UU Women's Federation. It was not an easy road. As discussion began, many UUs couldn't accept that they personally or their association was patriarchal. Natalie Gulbranson, UU Women's Federation president, had to explain to detractors repeatedly why references to mankind made women feel left out. She said, those who did not see a need to change the principles in the bylaws said, mankind doesn't leave you out. Gulbranson replied, we are human beings, but not men. There are many other terms you could use, humankind, human beings, that include women. This agreement came not only from men, but also from women. She shared, when we took the Women and Religion resolution to the International Association for Religious Freedom, the English women were furious. Why would we want to do such a thing? But, Gulbranson said, we felt that a wave was coming in our direction, and eventually we would prevail. In 1981, a non-sexist revision of the principles and purposes drafted by various women's groups was presented to the General Assembly. It caused great uneasiness. As ever, there were discussions and commissions and committees, and as is our practice with each renewal of the principles, it came to an initial vote at General Assembly, followed by congregations discussing, and another vote, and amendments, and those fiercely held commitments to rigorous process. The 1961 principles were amended and updated to pretty much the principles you see in the front of the gray hymnal, with a vote at the 1985 Assembly. Everybody's going to grab it. Some of them don't have the 1987 amendment that adds an additional source. If you're following current events in UU governance, there is a new set of principles that's been proposed and will be voted on in June at the UUA General Assembly. Reverend Mr. Barb Grieve, who was in your pulpit just a few weeks ago, and by the way, sends his greetings, was a key part, Barb was a key part of the official call for the review of the 1985 version. Barb was the co-moderator or president of the board of the UUA in 2019 when he and the late Alandria Williams charged the Commission on Appraisal to review Article 2 of the bylaw, which is where our principles are held. Now, here in 2023, this revision is well underway with rigorous and heartfelt process and discernment and commitment to involving people of our faith to engage at every step. There will be a vote at the UUA General Assembly this June, and if the majority votes to move the amended principles forward, it will mean another year of discernment and conversation and rigorous process with a final vote at the 2024 General Assembly. That one will need to pass by a 2/3 majority of the delegates. Now, this is your heritage. You come to this conversation about changing the name of your faith community with your religious ancestors at your back. I worked for Westside when they considered changing their name from West Seattle UU Fellowship to Westside UU Congregation. It was, as you would expect, a rigorous process with a committee, of course, and many gatherings and much discussion. The vote came down to a tie, with the president voting as the tiebreaker. I get it. This is big. This matters. Your decision matters. Your very name matters. But what I think matters more is your process. This is a time to decide things about your identity and your vision and what you are going to dream and love into existence in the next 5 years and the next 10 years and the next 50 years. And what a gift is that. I have absolute faith that whatever you land on will be exactly the right decision. My invitation to you is that when you get that knock on the door at 3 a.m., that you open it. Blessings and love to you, dear people.
Thank you, Reverend Carrie. That wonderful review reminds us all that there's a past and a future for us together. Please join me in a moment of silence as we reflect on Reverend Carrie's message. Our second musical interlude is personally prepared by Michael, and we will all listen to it and enjoy it. No title. Michael's creation. Lovely. Thank you, Michael. We are now going to pause the recording.
all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in His love.
We will now resume the recording as we finish the service. As members and friends of the Vashon Island Unitarian Fellowship, we commit to supporting our fellowship. Financial resources help us pay speakers and staff, support our social justice programs, and maintain our building. Please support VIUF with your pledges and offerings so that we can continue to be a vital community. Our fellowship engages beyond our walls for peace, social and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and its inhabitants. Once a month, we contribute the financial offering to a community organization that aligns with our values. This week's offering supports our beloved community. I invite our greeters to come up and pass around the offering basket. As we pass the basket, please join in singing, "We Give Thanks." Oh, no baskets?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, you can just put them in Craig's hands. Maybe we'll just leave the baskets.
Oh, they're coming.
Oh, they're coming. Oh, good. Oh, yeah, okay. They're always waiting back there, aren't they, for us?
Thanks.
We give thanks for this precious day, all gathered here and those far away, for the time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. All gathered here and those far away, for the time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Thank you, Michael. That sang so beautiful. And our Reverend Kopnick will provide our closing reading.
I literally don't think anybody's ever called me Reverend Kopnick. That's a new one. I like it, though. That's okay. Our closing reading today is by Reverend Charles A. Howe. May we go forth from this place thankful for the life that sustains and renews us, and open to the grace that surrounds and surprises us. May we go forth from this place with openness and thanksgiving. May it be so.
And thank you, Julie. She will extinguish the chalice. And we extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth.